You ever feel the kind of rage that makes your vision blur? That was me, on the side of a highway, flying past state troopers, because I just found out my parents locked my 6-year-old son alone in their house for 3 days so they could sip piña coladas on a cruise. Let me rewind a bit, but not too far. This isn't some slow burn. This is a train derailment. I had to go on a last-minute work trip across the country. My ex, currently enjoying her new life in Australia with husband upgrade 2.0, shrugged when I asked where our kid, Noah, would stay. You'll figure something out, she said. Cool. Thanks, co-parent of the year. So in a panic I turned to the only option left. My parents. Yeah, I know. Red flags. Bright ones. Blinking. But they smiled and gushed. We'd love to have him. He's our grandson after all. Cue fake enthusiasm. Looking back, I remember my mom hesitating for just a second. My dad muttering something about having plans, but I ignored it. Desperation makes you blind. I laid everything out crystal clear. No junk food, no reality TV until midnight, and for the love of God, don't leave him alone. They smiled and nodded like I was the one being overdramatic. We raised you, didn't we? My mom joked. Yeah. Exactly the problem. I left Noah with them and called every day. They painted the perfect picture. We baked cookies. We took him to the park. They even sent videos of him laughing, running in the yard. Honestly, I felt relieved. Then the 8th day hit. I got a call from Kenneth, my parents' elderly neighbor who's got sharper instincts than a Navy SEAL. Luke? I don't want to scare you, but I've been hearing crying from your parents' house since last night. I froze. What? No one's come to the door. Their car's there, but I don't think they're inside. Something's wrong. I called my parents, straight to voicemail, texted. Nothing. Kenneth, break the window. You sure? Do it. I heard the shatter over the phone. Then, silence. And finally, words I'll never forget. They're not here, but your boy is. I felt like vomiting. Kenneth found Noah in his room, curled up, shaking. The poor kid had been alone for 3 days. My 6-year-old, scared of thunder, left with snacks on the counter and a be back soon lie. I drove 9 hours straight. No food, no stops. I was pulled over 3 times. 2 let me go with warnings. The 3rd cop actually looked sick when I explained. Get there safe, he said. When I got there, midnight, Noah was asleep on Kenneth's porch swing, wrapped in a blanket like a lost baby bird. The second he saw me, he ran straight into my arms and didn't let go. I called my mom again. This time she answered like I'd just interrupted her yoga class. Oh, Luke, what a surprise. Where the hell are you? Home, of course. Really? Funny. I'm standing in your empty kitchen. Silence. Then, we just stepped out for a bit. Click. She hung up. I texted. If you're not back by morning, I'm calling the cops. No reply. At 7:12 a.m., the door creaked open. And there they were, my parents. Tanned, grinning, dressed like they just stepped off a carnival brochure. Oh, sweetie, you're here. Where have you been? I roared. Mom waved her hand like I was being a drama queen. It was just a quick cruise. We left him snacks. Snacks. My son was a wreck. He hadn't eaten properly. He cried through thunderstorms. And they? They'd been downing seafood buffets and gambling in the Bahamas. My dad had the audacity to say, he needs to learn independence. He's 6, I said. He sleeps with a teddy bear. He can't reach the top shelf. We did nothing wrong, Mom huffed. We deserve this vacation. That's when I snapped. I walked to the key hook, grabbed the car keys, the car I paid for, and stuffed them in my pocket. You don't deserve anything, I said. Hey, you can't take our car, my dad shouted, like this was some sitcom. Call an Uber, I said. Oh, wait, your phones might not work since you ignored me for 3 days, Mom shrieked as I opened the door. You're being cruel, Matthew. I strapped Noah into the back seat. He gripped me like I was going to vanish. Again. Then I turned back one last time. Oh. And by the way, I canceled your emergency credit card. Mom paled. You what? It's for emergencies. You used it to buy margaritas. I got into the car, started the engine, and drove off, leaving behind 2 stunned statues in flip-flops and vacation tans, watching everything they took for granted vanish in one cold, final breath. They'll never see my son again. Ever. And the best part? They can explain to their friends why their house keys don't work anymore. The silence in the car was deafening. My son had finally dozed off, curled up with his stuffed dinosaur, still clutching my sleeve in his sleep like he was scared I'd vanish. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel, but I forced myself to breathe. 1, 2, 3. I wasn't just angry, I was shattered. These were the same people who used to rock me to sleep after nightmares. The same people I once believed would fight off monsters for me. And now, they were the monsters. Monsters with tan lines and cruise ship margarita cups. Back at home, I laid Matthew in his bed and sat at the edge for a long time, watching him sleep. His face twitched when thunder cracked outside. He whimpered. I pulled the blanket up to his chin and whispered, "You're safe, I promise." Then I stood up, walked into my office, opened my laptop, and started making calls. First, the police. They didn't believe me at first. I had to repeat the story 3 times, send screenshots of the texts I'd sent, the call logs, the video Kenneth took while breaking in, and a photo of the nearly empty snack-covered counter. The dispatcher sounded stunned. Then serious. "We'll be filing a child endangerment report immediately, sir. An officer will reach out soon." Good. Let them explain to the police why they thought leaving snacks was enough parental care for a 6-year-old. Second, the bank. The emergency credit card I'd given them? Blocked. And I filed a dispute on every charge that didn't look essential. Which was all of them. Spa packages, jewelry from the ship's gift shop, some flaming drinks with umbrellas in them that cost $38 each. Cancelled. Goodbye margaritas. Hello consequences. Third, a lawyer. This wasn't just about being angry anymore. This was about making sure these two never got within a football field of my kid again. I found a family attorney willing to take the case fast. When I explained everything, he paused, then muttered, "This is straight out of a horror movie." Yeah, I was living it. The next day my phone rang. Not my mom, not my dad. It was their lawyer. I nearly choked laughing. They were threatening me with a lawsuit for taking their car. Their car. I told the guy, flatly, "I bought that car. I pay the insurance. I fill the gas tank. I even set up their freaking Spotify playlists. Let them sue." He hung up after muttering something about family tensions. Family tensions? These people locked my son in a house like he was a pet hamster and went to dance salsa in the Bahamas. 3 days later, the police followed up. Charges were confirmed. Child neglect. Their neighbor Kenneth gave a full statement. So did I. So did the pediatrician, who confirmed Matthew had mild dehydration and elevated anxiety levels. He'd lost weight. He didn't want to be in rooms alone. He flinched when the front door creaked. That wasn't fine. That was trauma. My parents? They went from righteous rage to desperate apologies faster than you could say court summons. They left voicemail after voicemail. "Matthew, let's not escalate this. We were just taking a little break. You're blowing this out of proportion. Come on, son, let's talk. We miss you." Miss me? They never even noticed they'd ignored my calls for 3 days. If Kenneth hadn't stepped in, God knows how this story would have ended. I started therapy for Matthew that week. I didn't wait. The therapist said what I already feared. He had separation anxiety and was showing signs of night terrors. He woke up screaming sometimes, begging not to be left again. It shattered me. Every time. Then I got the final blow. CPS wanted a full evaluation, not of me, but of my parents' home. They wanted to assess whether it was even safe for visitation. I told them flatly, there will be no visitation. Ever. Not after this. Not after watching my son sit silently in a blanket. Too afraid to ask for food, too loyal to believe his grandparents had abandoned him. He still asked about them. Why didn't Grandma come back? What did I do wrong? Was I bad? I told him, again and again. You did nothing wrong, nothing. They were wrong. They were bad. But it didn't matter. He kept looking at the door. I filed for a no-contact order the next week, and here's where the twist hit. My parents showed up to the court hearing with a news crew. Yep, a local station. They claimed I was trying to cut them off from their only grandchild. They spun this fantasy about a vindictive son with a grudge, painted themselves as sweet old folks who just took a short vacation and were heartbroken at the fallout. But then the officer testified, then Kenneth, then the pediatrician. And then I showed the court the text my mom sent the night I found out what they did. You're being dramatic. He had food. We're not monsters. The judge's jaw clenched. Her ruling was swift. full no-contact order, pending criminal proceedings. I walked out of the courtroom feeling 10 pounds lighter. But it wasn't over yet. My parents, they went online. They posted pictures of my son, old ones, family events, birthday cakes, grandma kisses. They told their side of the story on Facebook, begging for sympathy, begging people to believe they'd just been misunderstood. I reported every post, and then I posted one myself, just one. A photo of the snack-covered kitchen counter, time-stamped. No commentary, no rant. The internet did the rest. Their comments section turned into a war zone. The truth had finally shown up to the party, and it was pissed. The fallout from that post hit like a bomb. At first I was hesitant to even upload it. I didn't want to make this public, didn't want to air out dirty laundry. But when I saw my parents lying through their teeth, acting like they were the ones wounded that I had stolen their grandchild over some silly misunderstanding, I snapped. They wanted attention. Fine. I gave it to them. That single photo, Matthew's snack-covered countertop, a digital timestamp in the corner, his half-finished juice box beside a tower of empty chip bags, did all the talking I needed. It went viral within hours. Reddit, Facebook groups, even TikTok. People weren't just mad. They were outraged. Thousands of comments poured in. That poor child. This is abuse. They left a 6-year-old alone for 3 days? What monsters? Someone give this dad a hug and a beer, or 10. It was a strange, bitter sort of validation. The internet didn't know me, but they believed me. And for once my parents couldn't twist the narrative. Not this time. Not with the receipts out in the open. Of course my parents tried damage, control. They posted some vague statement about praying for healing, and how some people can't understand how love sometimes looks different. Love? If abandonment, dehydration, and court summons are their idea of love, I'd rather raise Matthew in a cave with wolves. A few days later, their lawyer called again. Only this time he was nervous. He asked if we'd consider settling. Settling what? I asked, barely holding back a laugh. Public perception, he said carefully. There's a lot of negative attention on them right now. They're willing to apologize privately, and if you'd agree to delete the post, I hung up. They could keep their apology. They could bottle it, gift wrap it, and throw it into the ocean. Because here's the truth. They weren't sorry they left my son alone. They were sorry the world found out. And now? They were finally facing consequences. Criminal. Charges moved forward. Their attorney tried to downplay it, said it was a simple misjudgment, not criminal intent. But the DA wasn't buying it. Neither was the judge. And neither was I. Meanwhile, Matthew was slowly healing. Therapy helped. Routine helped more. We made a new bedtime ritual. 2 stories, 1 song, and 5 minutes of hug time. Every night. No exceptions. One night after a particularly stormy evening he whispered, "You're not going to leave like they did, right?" I looked him right in the eyes and said, "Never, not for anything." He smiled. A real one. First time in weeks. But just as things were settling, I got a call that knocked the air out of me. It was from my sister, Olivia. She'd been quiet through the whole thing, neutral, Switzerland style. She'd sent a "hope things calm down" text and then went radio silent. But now she was crying on the phone. "They showed up at my house," she said through sobs. "I didn't even know they were coming. Mom said they needed a place to stay since you're trying to ruin their lives." I clenched my jaw. "Don't let them stay, Liv. You have kids." "I know," she whispered. "That's why I'm calling. I told them no." They screamed. At me. Dad said I was choosing a selfish man over the people who raised me. I bit my tongue. Hard. But Olivia wasn't done. I kicked them out. Told them they weren't welcome. "But you need to know. They're obsessed with seeing Matthew. They said they'd find a way." I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I installed a full security system. Cameras, motion sensors, everything short of a moat and a drawbridge. I called my lawyer and requested a permanent restraining order instead of temporary. The court date was set, and in the meantime I started a journal. Not for me, for Matthew. One day he'll ask, maybe when he's 16, maybe when he's 30. But he'll ask why we don't see Grandma and Grandpa anymore. And I'll show him the journal. The screenshots. The therapist notes. The court documents. Not to poison him against them, but to give him the truth. To show him I protected him. To remind him that I didn't stay silent. A few weeks later, I got an anonymous message through a burner account on social media. It read, "You're a vindictive piece of trash. Hope your kid turns out better than you." There was no name, but I recognized my father's writing style instantly. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to the DA's office and added it to the ongoing harassment file. The last thing I heard, my parents had moved into a short-term motel 2 towns over. Their retirement cruise photos had dried up. Their Facebook page had gone dark. Friends were distancing themselves. Apparently no one wanted to be associated with the grandparents who forgot the kid. And still they didn't apologize. Not once. Instead they clung to the idea that they'd been wronged. It was almost funny. Almost, because in trying to ruin my reputation, they'd torched their own. And the irony, if they'd just said, "We messed up, we're sorry. What can we do to make this right?" Things might have ended differently, but they didn't. They chose pride over family, and I chose my son over them, every time. You'd think things would calm down after the restraining order. They didn't. If anything, my parents just shifted their tactics, from public smear campaigns to covert manipulation, like some twisted game of emotional whack-a-mole every time. I thought it was over. A new head popped up. The first came in the form of Pastor Rick. I hadn't seen him in years, not since I stopped going to church after Matthew was born. But suddenly he was calling, leaving gentle grandfatherly voicemails on my phone. "Son, I heard about the family troubles. Your parents are heartbroken. Maybe it's time to consider forgiveness? Rebuilding the bridge?" Forgiveness from a man who hadn't called when I was drowning in grief, raising a toddler alone, trying to keep food on the table and my sanity intact. And now he shows up when they're finally suffering? I didn't return the call. 2 days later, I got a letter, in the mail, no return address. Inside was a typed message that read, "The Bible teaches us to honor our father and mother. You're cursing your own child by holding on to hate." Underneath, in handwriting I knew all too well, was a single word: repent. I nearly tore it in half. Instead I filed it with the rest of the court documents, but I'll admit it. My hands were shaking. See, the worst part wasn't the harassment. It wasn't even the stalking or the sudden flood of religious guilt trips. The worst part was how good they were at flipping the narrative, because while I was trying to build a normal life for Matthew, they were working behind the scenes, playing the victims to anyone who would listen. I started getting odd looks at the grocery store. A woman muttered, "Deadbeat son," under her breath as she passed me near the frozen food aisle. A former neighbor posted a cryptic status online about children today having no respect for the ones who raised them. It was like being trapped in a reverse Truman Show. Everyone watching, judging, only I didn't know who was in on the script. And still, I kept going. Matthew started smiling more. We adopted a dog, some hyper mix of lab and chaos. Named him Tank. Tank loved Matthew like a brother, shadowed him everywhere. It was the best decision I'd made in years. One night, while we were building a pillow fort in the living room, Matthew turned to me and said, "Daddy, do bad people ever stop being bad?" I didn't answer right away because I didn't know. Instead, I said, "Sometimes, but even if they don't, we don't have to let them hurt us anymore." He nodded, satisfied. Then he threw a pillow at my face and yelled, "Fort War!" God, I love that kid. But the peace didn't last long. A few weeks later, I got a call from Matthew's school. My stomach dropped the second I heard the principal's voice. "Mr. Evans," she said, "we had a situation today." Apparently, a woman claiming to be Matthew's legal guardian had come to the front office, insisting she was there to pick him up for an emergency dentist appointment. She had a fake ID in my mom's name, and the school almost believed her almost. Thankfully, Matthew's teacher knew the drill. We'd prepped every staff member after the custody fallout. Safe word, photos, emergency protocols. When the woman couldn't recite the safe word, security was called. She fled before the police arrived. I felt like vomiting. That night I sat Matthew down. Told him, gently, that sometimes people we love make dangerous choices. That if he ever sees Nana or Grandpa near the school, the park, anywhere, he should yell for help and run to a safe adult. His eyes were wide. "But Nana used to make cookies." "I know, buddy," I said. "But sometimes people who bake cookies still make scary decisions." He didn't cry, he just nodded. Quietly. Like he was rearranging the pieces of his world and trying to make them fit again. Later that night, when he was asleep, I cried for both of us. And then I called my lawyer. We escalated the restraining order into a full no-contact court order with mandatory distance requirements for school zones. We submitted video evidence from the school's camera footage. The court issued an emergency injunction. But it wasn't just legal now. It was personal. They were trying to steal him, so I did what any father would do. I fought back. I updated every contact in Matthew's school, doctor's office, daycare, and extracurriculars. I made laminated cards with my contact info and the restraining order details. I bought a GPS tracker for his backpack. I taught him how to press the emergency button on my smartwatch, and then I started writing again. Not on Reddit this time. I began chronicling the full story in a blog. Every lie, every betrayal, every court hearing, every violation. Not just to vent, but to create a record, because the world had a short memory. And I wouldn't let Matthew become another boy forgotten in the chaos of custody disputes. If something happened to me, I wanted the truth to survive. One night, while updating the blog, I found myself staring at an old photo. Me, my parents, and a baby Matthew in his stroller. We looked happy, but it was a lie. A snapshot with the truth airbrushed out. And I realized something important. This fight was never about revenge. It was about freedom. Mine, Matthew's. Our right to live without fear or manipulation. And I was willing to burn every bridge necessary to protect it. Even if I built our new life from the ashes. 2 months passed. 2 glorious, quiet months. No fake calls, no stalking, no mysterious letters. It was like my parents had finally gotten the message, or were regrouping underground like emotional insurgents. Either way, the silence was unsettling, but I was grateful for it. Matthew started karate lessons. You should have seen him. Tiny GI, oversized belt, punching the air like he was Bruce Lee's sidekick. It did wonders for his confidence. He was sleeping better, laughing more. So was I. I'd even started dating again. Casual, cautious, and slow, because the last thing I needed was more chaos. But still, it felt good. Like a piece of my old self was crawling out from under the wreckage. Then, of course, it all exploded again. It started with a bank alert. Unusual login detected. I checked my phone, heart pounding. Someone had tried to access my savings account. Thankfully, 2-factor authentication stopped them. I changed passwords, locked it all down. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. The next day, I got a call from Child Protective Services. That sinking feeling returned instantly. A report had been filed against me, an anonymous tip claiming I was emotionally neglecting Matthew, brainwashing him against his grandparents, and exposing him to adult content. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I took a deep breath and said, "What do you need from me?" CPS did a home visit. I walked them through Matthew's room, his schoolwork, his pet dog Tank, who happily peed on their shoe in protest, and every art project on the fridge. Matthew was polite, calm, and chatty. The social worker actually smiled. "We see a lot of ugly homes," she said. "This isn't one of them." Case closed in a week, but I knew who was behind it. They weren't trying to win anymore. They were trying to destroy. The blog was getting traction too. At first it was just a few readers. Then someone shared it on a parenting forum. Then, on a legal advice subreddit, people started messaging me. Parents, survivors, people who'd been gaslit by their own families for years. Some even thanked me for telling their story when they couldn't. I started getting invites to speak on podcasts. One small magazine asked to publish a feature. I turned most of them down. I wasn't ready to become a poster child for family trauma. I just wanted to keep my son safe. But I couldn't stop the momentum, and neither could my parents. The more the truth came out, the more desperate they became. Their Facebook profiles went dark. Their church stopped posting pictures with them. Word was spreading, even in their cozy little suburban bubble. I wasn't even surprised when I got the next legal notice. My parents were suing me for defamation of character. Yup, they were trying to silence the blog. Shut down my story. Pretend none of it had happened. Erase the abuse with a court order and a smug smile. My lawyer, bless her cynical heart, laughed out loud when she read the complaint. "You have mountains of documentation," she said. "They don't have a leg to stand on. But they know that. This is just to drain you." It worked, a little. Lawyer fees, time off work, emotional drain. Even with everything filed properly, it was still a storm I had to walk through. But the hearing never happened. Because 2 weeks before the court date, I got a call from the sheriff's department. My parents had been arrested. Turns out, their fake CPS report wasn't the only one. They'd filed 3 others under different names and burner phones, against me, a neighbor, and even Matthew's school principal. One of the reports had been traced to a phone used in another harassment case 5 years ago. That was enough. For a warrant. They were charged with filing false reports, identity fraud, and obstruction. The defamation suit dropped. I didn't dance. I didn't celebrate. I just stood in my kitchen, staring out the window as Matthew played with Tank in the backyard, and felt nothing. Just a strange, cold relief. The kind you feel when you realize the storm has finally passed. Not because the sky cleared, but because the tornado tore everything down, and there's nothing left to destroy. I called my sister that night. We hadn't spoken in years, not since she'd moved across the country to get away from them too. We talked for 3 hours. Laughed, cried. She told me she'd read the blog. She said she was proud of me. That meant more than I expected. A few weeks later, a package arrived. At my door. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Inside, a single photo of Matthew, one my mother must have taken when he was 2, asleep in his stroller, along with a note. He was always beautiful. We just wanted to be part of it. No apology. No responsibility. Just a quiet echo of their entitlement. I burned it. Every lie. Every manipulation. Every toxic whisper pretending to be love. I watched them go up in smoke in my fireplace. Not out of rage, out of finality. They were gone now. Truly gone. And in their absence, something else bloomed. Peace. Real, honest, imperfect peace. I thought it was over. I really did. After the arrests, the lawsuits, the blog gaining momentum, and the social services clearing my name, I finally felt like I could exhale. Like I wasn't living every day waiting for the other shoe to drop. Matthew was thriving. Straight A's. Karate belt upgrade. He even started learning guitar because rock stars are cool and Dad listens to old man music. For the record, Pearl Jam is not old man music. Life was finally stable, steady, uneventful in the best possible way. Until the day my doorbell rang at 3:14 a.m. I sat up in bed, heart already racing. Nothing good comes at that hour unless it's a pizza, and nobody delivers pepperoni with a side of dread. I looked through the peephole. A man in a dark hoodie, face partially turned, holding something in his hand. I didn't open the door. I called the police, adrenaline shaking through my fingers. He was gone by the time they arrived. But the motion-activated camera I'd installed last year, it caught everything. The man had poured something flammable onto my front porch. He was trying to light it. The flame didn't catch, cheap lighter or divine intervention, I'll never know, but he'd clearly meant to set my house on fire. With Matthew and me inside. It took 6 days to identify him. A neighbor's security camera caught the car he left in. Registered to a family friend of my parents. A guy who once helped my dad renovate the garage. A guy who suddenly had $10,000 in his checking account right after bail was posted for my parents. He confessed in minutes, said he was doing them a favor. That they just wanted to scare me. That it wasn't supposed to go that far. Attempted arson. Conspiracy. Endangering the life of a child. He's still in jail. My parents? They denied everything. Of course they did. Claimed he was a troubled man who took it upon himself. But the money trail, the messages, the planning, none of it lied. They were charged as co-conspirators. And suddenly, this wasn't a petty family squabble anymore. This was national news. Local station picked it up first. Parents arrested in arson plot against son over custody battle. Then the blog exploded. Thousands of shares. Comment sections full of outrage. Lawyers started reaching out to offer pro bono representation. For me. One journalist from a major outlet emailed, "Do you want to tell your story, the real story?" I did. Not for fame. Not for revenge. For truth. I sat across from that camera, in a modest studio, and told the world what it means to be hunted by people who claim to love you. What it does to your psyche when family is just a cage wrapped in ribbons. What it took to fight for one small boy's peace of mind. And how many sleepless nights it cost. The interview went viral. Over 12 million views in a week. People sent letters, donations, books for Matthew, photos of their kids holding Team Matthew signs. A couple in Oregon sent him a handmade karate belt rack with his name carved in the wood. I cried reading every single letter, not from sadness, from something I hadn't felt in a long time. Validation. For once, the world believed me. The trial was brutal, drawn out, but the verdict, guilty, on all counts. My parents were sentenced to 5 years each, with no contact orders. The judge didn't mince words. You weaponized your relationship. You manipulated systems meant to protect. You endangered a child for ego. I don't know if they'll serve the full time. I don't care. They're gone now. Legally, emotionally, spiritually, erased. And I'm not rebuilding from the ashes. I'm building something entirely new. We moved. Not just cities, states. A small town near the mountains. Fresh air, friendly neighbors, a school with a treehouse instead of a detention hall. Matthew calls it our fortress. I call it freedom. The blog? Still going. Only now it's bigger. More contributors. Other survivors. We renamed it The Truth Cabinet. And the podcast I once said no to? I host it now. Each week we unpack a story from someone who was made to feel small, unheard, invisible. And every week, we help them light the signal flare. You're not crazy. You're not alone. You're not broken. You're just surviving in a world where some of the monsters wear family names. And that doesn't make you weak. It makes you brave. Last night Matthew played me his first full song on guitar. Clumsy, full of off-key strumming and pure joy. He looked up at me afterward and said, "Do you think Grandpa and Grandma still hate us?" I paused, then said, "I think they hate the fact that we're happy without them." He nodded. Cool. And just like that, he went back to being a kid. That's the real ending, isn't it? Not revenge, not courtrooms or clickbait headlines, but peace. Ordinary, glorious peace, the kind you fight for. Not because it's flashy, but because it's worth everything. Because the real story isn't about who tried to burn us down. It's about how we rose anyway. And here it is. The finale of today's story. Did everything turn out as you imagined? Or did it end unexpectedly? I'd love to hear what you think. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and let's dive into the discussion together. If this story kept you in suspense, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't signed up yet, what are you waiting for? This is your chance to join an incredible community where exciting new stories unfold every day. Click the subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay up to date. Thanks for your attention, and see you on your new adventures.